Okay. Let's get this big. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our May Tech Bite. Uh, kind of an interesting one today, and not one that's necessarily like a checkpoint wide thing, I guess, but we're going to talk a little bit about VPN clients today, right? The software that goes on your Windows machine, Mac, Linux, your phone, whatever. Not so much your phone for this one, but um, that creates a VPN connection back to your gateway. We're going to talk a little bit about the architecture and how that is come to be, how it exists, and maybe an alternative method. Now, for our customers who do not have a, a VPN clients or they have very few of them, this will be a very interesting way to start your system. For our customers who have the clients already, um, may give you something to think about and may give you an idea of let's uh, undertake this and maybe change things around a little bit. So this one's kind of a food for thought. I hope you find it interesting. So let's get kicked off here. So VPN. What's the typical situation? The typical situation is a customer has a gateway or gateways. Eventually, they want to be able to have users VPN into their network to access internal resources, right? It might be right off the bat, might be that you've had it for 25 years in other, you know, with us or with other vendors, or it might be that it's brand new, right? Um, with Checkpoint, there's a lot of different clients. There actually is a free VPN client, which doesn't have some of the advanced features. So what'll happen sometimes is they'll start with what's called Secure Remote, the free client. And pretty quickly they'll say, you know what, we want access to some of the advanced Checkpoint VPN features like office mode and roaming are two of the big ones. Um, so they'll purchase a license, right? And enable VPN client, which has been for a long time now. The license to get it is Harmony is the endpoint license, right? It's Harmony endpoint for the last 4 or 5 years. Previously, it was called Sandblast Agent. Prior to that, it was called Endpoint Container, I believe. You bought the container, which had the VPN blade in it, and that's going way back. But I still see customers that have that in their user center. So you purchase this licenses, right? A license per user. Um, you put the license onto the gateway infrastructure, right? The management machine. And then all you need to do is install the client, dot, dot, dot. So how do people do that? Now, some people do it with third-party device management, right? You can deploy it through GPO, group policy. And if you're good with that, you can deploy it that way. Also, if you have a like a UEM, right, a unified endpoint management solution, something like Intune or Manage Engine or Avanti or I think Good makes one, or there's dozens out there. I know IBM has Mass 360, which I think does this. Anyway, um, you could do it through a UEM, right? And that's probably the for people that have this technology, it's probably the best way, right? They send it out. Um, they'll know who has it installed and who's non-compliant with that, et cetera, right? But there's some drawbacks even to this. First off, the obvious one, you need to have and have the knowledge and ability, et cetera, to use one of these third-party systems, right? So, if you don't have Manage Engine, then you're not gonna, that doesn't help you for this. Um, and some of these methods can't track the version of the client you have, or they can't efficiently upgrade the client. Specifically, group policy will only take you so far with that, right? Um, but this is one way to get the client out there. A lot of people are familiar with it. A lot of people use it. So that's one. The other way which is a little less elegant, is I call it the parade method. And here you see a AI generated picture of a guy handing out candy at the parade, right? The parade method, you download the install file for the client and you give it to the user through some method, right? You put it on a SharePoint or on some shared folder somewhere, or uh, link it up on Google Drive. You put it on a flash drive, however it is you share the thing. You grab the installer, you share it out, right? Um, the users install it on their own on their machines, presumably. And maybe you add it to your golden image, right? So that going forward, your newly imaged laptops, desktops, whatever's will have the VPN client. But there's obvious drawbacks to this system, right? So first one, and probably the biggest one, is you gave the users the client to install. This does not mean they're actually going to install it on their work laptop, right? There's nothing controlling them from doing that. They can install it on their work laptop. They could also install it on their home laptop. They can install it on their friend's laptop. They can install it on grandma's PC from 1997, right? You really don't know, right? Um, you have no idea what versions of the client are out there because you sent out an install file, people installed it, and then time went by, right? So, unless if you didn't send out any new versions of the file, then I guess you do know what version it is, but it could be years old, right? And then it could have issues, could have vulnerabilities, could have, compatibility issues with newer versions of Windows, new patches, etc. And then you have no easy way to upgrade the client, right? There's no central place where you can push out an update. So you have to either go back and repeat this whole process and say, listen, guys, all you users out there, I put a new endpoint client on a share folder, and now you guys got to install that. And here's the steps. And we know how that tends to go. So this is the parade method is very inelegant, right? Gets the job done, I guess. The parade method was very popular the week that COVID really shut everything down. That was a big one. Um, but yeah, it's not great. All right, so we've heard, the issue, right? So what's Joe proposing? So you can use the Harmony endpoint management in the cloud to manage the endpoint clients. That's how it works. That's how Harmony Endpoint works. And all of us who have Harmony Endpoint are very familiar with this. Um, the endpoint management, and you've seen it in some of my TechBytes for sure, tells you all the details you need, right? How many clients you got out there? What machines are they on? What OSs? What client versions? Everything, right? You can force the upgrade instantaneously. So if you have a policy, the policy says everybody needs to be on version blah blah blah. Immediately, you just click a button to no, now we want version blah 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 plus one, hit install policy, and within 10 minutes, every single one of your endpoint clients are going to reach out to that server and start their upgrade just like that. There's other benefits, right? Because now you have the Harmony endpoint, you have the Harmony endpoint management. Uh, you can easily add the VPN sites to the clients. So whatever IP address your gateway or gateways have, pop it in there, save it. Now all the clients, when you install them, will just have that list of IPs to connect to. Push operations. So we've seen push operations at least a little in some of our TechBytes here. Push operations give you the ability to force the client or to make the client force the endpoint to do a variety of tasks, many of which are system level. And in a way, gives you a little bit of that third party management feel that we were talking about earlier, where it can do some things that those can do. You are set up to easily deploy additional blades, right? And we're gonna expand on that in a bit. But once you have the Harmony client and the endpoint management up, should you one day want to turn on any of the other Harmony endpoint blades. And I mean, the number is growing rapidly. I would bet there's got to be 12 or so blades at this point, with a variety of features. Even within those, you are already set up to just do that. It'll be easy. You're going to gain access to the thin agent. So we've seen in some of our other tech bites or some demos, Checkpoint has two ways to deploy the Harmony endpoint client, either a full-fledged, full package that, can range from tens of megabytes up to, a couple hundred megabytes, of all the blades, including the package. That's the regular classic style install. But we also have the thin agent. You can literally install Harmony endpoint with a under 2 megabyte install file, right? And then that install file just puts the client. The client reaches to the management server, says, "Hey, what do I need to download?" and downloads those pieces. There is no additional admin oversight required for Harmony endpoint management server. Checkpoint keeps it up, keeps it running, does all the upgrades, right? And since we're on that, kind of branching from that, the most important thing is it's free, right? You already have this with your Harmony endpoint license that you bought for the VPN agent, with a few little caveats. So on that part, here is a really good eye chart. um, this is the endpoint licensing. We have all these different flavors of Harmony endpoint. Almost everybody who is saying, "I just need VPN client," is going to buy Harmony endpoint basic. Right? And you see right here, the remote access VPNs actually on all of them. But look at all these things you get when you buy basic, right? You get the cloud management, you get threat cloud, you get firewall, application control, endpoint compliance, you get anti-bot, anti-exploit, anti-malware, behavioral guard, port protection, on and on and on, right? So that's the beauty of you own all these things, right? And it's not explicitly stated here, but you also, when you buy a annual subscription license to any of these Harmony endpoint packages, right? Because we do have one or two that are like perpetual licenses. They don't get this, but everybody's buying the subscription one now. The subscription licenses come with the endpoint management on the cloud for free. It's included. So that's the beauty of it, right? So that was my presentation. I will pause I'll get my demo together while we pause for any questions that might be, which I don't see any yet, and that's fine. Let me go ahead and pop this open. Okay, let's make sure one more time for the questions. I don't see any in the chat, which is perfectly fine. Okay, so let's continue sharing my screen. Okay, so here is the Infinity portal. We have Harmony endpoint management in front of us. I spun this server up last night. I did not have time to add a machine to it, which is my fault. But that shouldn't impact our demo except for one piece, which I have. I could maybe do some things for you. So those of us who have Harmony endpoint or Harmony browse, right, will be extremely familiar with this management. Those that do not, it operates a lot like some of the other Checkpoint products. When you have I'm actually going to show that other environment. So when you have, I'm going to probably swap 2 or 3 times between tenants here. And that's, again, I didn't install clients. That's my fault. But when you have multiple endpoints in your environment here, this dashboard populates with all sorts of information, right? And we have this operational overview, which can show us how many machines we have out there with the client, right? What's the mix of OSs? Are they laptops or desktops? What version of the endpoint do we have out there? right? So this way we know if we have to upgrade something, how many of those users we got to update. And if I click on any of these, it's going to tell me which users have that version. We also see the operating systems, right? And which ones they are. We got some Windows 10s, we got some 10 Enterprise, 10 Pro, we got 11, we got other ones. And any one of these machines we click on is going to tell us this is what this machine has. So we've already gained a lot of insight just by seeing this, right? Um, Now I know probably a few people saying, "Well, Joe, the Harmony endpoint management has a lot of things in it, and it does all these different techniques, and look at all this policy." You don't have to worry about any of this policy, right? This is all about threat prevention and stuff, and that's great. And you may go down that road one day because, again, going back to that slide I showed you, you own a lot of these just from your subscription. But for today's purposes, for just getting VPN out there, literally all you're going to do is you're going to have one rule. It's going to say, let's hop again. My bad on this. Let's hop again. You're going to have one deployment rule. It's going to say plainly, don't install any of the blades except the VPN blade. And you're going to be able to deploy it like that. You're going to be able to upgrade the version because, as you see, I have this one rule, and we turn off all the blades. You see, they're all unchecked except for VPN. And now we can choose our version, right? So like this is the recommended one, right? If we would have all the endpoints deployed, they would all be this version. If one day you wanted to make them to the latest, you literally click this, install policy, and when those endpoint clients reach out to this server, they're going to say, okay, I got to upgrade. That easy, right? Um, you can build if you wish, you can build your client, right, to have the thick client, right? So you literally can say, okay, here's my Windows machine, VPN only, pick a version, well, why not? And then you strip that out, you put just VPN, right? And you can even select the virtual group if you want. Uh, but literally, this will be our large install file, right? It won't be too huge, but you can do it all directly if you're touching the machine, right? Um, Put that file on a flash drive or on a SharePoint or something. You can also download the quick client. The quick client is literally 2 MB, right? Right, and here it is right here. So you just select your version, and you can add it to one of your virtual groups if you want. And look, it downloads an MSF file. It's less than 2 MB. That easy. This one will install just the client. That client will reach out to this server and say, hey, what do I need to download? What blades do I need? And the server will say, all you need is the VPN, man. Download the VPN from me. You'll install it and you'll be good to go. The other thing that you may have noticed when we were back at that other page in the policy, right? The export package, you can insert your VPN sites in here and save them so that the client just plain old has them and the user can just connect, right? So literally you just put, HQ underscore VPN, and the address will be 10.20.30.40, right? And you choose your authentication method. We'll use a good old password and username. All my clients will now have this VPN option. It's just baked right in. That easy. Um, the other thing we mentioned was the push operations, right? So we've definitely seen this in some of the TechByte, but as a nice refresher, you can easily set this up now where you can do certain functions. And most of them, if you're just doing VPN, will be in this agent settings. But for example, You can schedule a shutdown of the computer, right? You can restart a computer. You can uninstall the client if you say, okay, this person no longer should have access to VPN, right? You can do other things too. You can kill processes. You can even run scripts if you're savvy enough to do so, right? You could deploy new VPN sites. So if you build some VPN sites in here, you can deploy a new VPN site. Um, Literally all you do is you pick one of these features. So we're going to restart some computers. I would not recommend selecting your entire organization, but literally you pick in this window, you'll have all the machines that you've installed. Which one or which group of them do you want to restart? And then you'll be able to configure. I don't think it's going to let me do it. That's what I figured. Then you'll at the third step configure, you know, can the user delay this? How many times can they delay it? That sort of thing. But once you do it, once you set it, it will go out and the client will restart all those machines. Or if you pick to do a script, it'll run the script on all those machines, which is like really cool, and it's helpful for management of things unrelated to Checkpoint. Kind of lastly, I guess, um, once more, I'm going to pop that slide back up. You see that when you buy any of these endpoint packages, and basic is usually the one for people buy just for VPN, you have all these other features, right? You have the firewall, you have the application control, you have the endpoint compliance, you have all these threat prevention, features like anti-malware and stuff. So under a variety of scenarios, it's easy for you now if you have the client deployed to your machines and they're just using VPN. It's easy for you to add those into those clients. So for whatever reason, you're changing anti-malware vendors, right? Or maybe your anti-malware is having some kind of problem, right? Or your anti-malware is great, don't worry about that, but you're having concerns with an application that you need to block, and your current vendor doesn't have the ability to block applications, right? And also the compliance of the machine. There's certain things you can do with that, and you can even tie those into VPN, right? So you could say, hey, if the machine is in a risky state, non-compliant state, you cannot connect to VPN. So to run any of those features out, right, you're going to have 10, 100, 1,000 VPN clients sitting out there. All you got to do is click them in here in this deployment policy. Now you're going to want to set a policy rule of how this feature is going to work. But literally, you click this, you hit save and install. Within 10 minutes, those clients should all contact this management server and say, hey, is there a new policy? And it's going to say, yes, there is. Now we're going to run the compliance blade. So start downloading the compliance blade. That easy to roll another blade out. Yeah. So I'm getting close on time and I got one more thing to show. I'm going to check for questions. I have one, and the question is absolutely perfect. The question is essentially, Joe, you showed us all the perks. Are there any drawbacks or hurdles uh, because of doing it this way as opposed to the old way? There is one thing that you'll have to do differently. I don't even know if I would call this a drawback. It's just you have to think and do a little different than you were. So without the endpoint management, if you were just putting the license on the gateways and handing out the client through whatever method you were using, you would, when you licensed your Harmony endpoint license, let's see if this is timed out. I hope not. Thinking this might be timed out. No. Okay. When you licensed your endpoint licenses, when you have VPN, you would literally just pump in here, your VPN site, 10.20.30.40, right? Um, However, when you're doing this cloud management, you have to split these two licenses. And you see Checkpoint has split these two licenses for this kind of purpose, right? So you literally pop the cloud license into the uh, sandblast part, all the threat prevention, et cetera. And the VPN part is going to go on your gateway and you'll use your gateway management's address. That's it. You license and you're done. Oh, it wants me to fill in this info. Okay, fine. Fill this in. IPs are still there. Send it. And we're done. You can download, if you have your gateway set up to pull directly from the user center, it'll just do it. If you want to get the license file and upload that to the gateways manually through Smart Update, you could do it that way too. It's going to email you this info. The cloud management is just there waiting. So all you got to do is tie your portal tenant to your UC and you'll be good to go. So I went kind of long here. I hope that this was interesting. I hope that some of us will look at this and say, oh, this might be a better way to manage VPN and deal with our VPN clients, right? And maybe even a few of us that have the clients out there in quote unquote parade style. Maybe that's a good opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to call those in. We're going to upgrade the clients because we're probably due to upgrade the clients anyway. But we're going to start this management server in the cloud. We're going to download the client from here, and we're going to then from now on have this all managed. So I don't see any further questions. I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you so much for coming. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was useful. And if not, at least it was like, an interesting thing to see. And I hope to see you all on our next Tech Bite. So thank you very much. Have a great day.